So now that we have understood about the dependency injections and how the application context to work in Spring Boot, so now we have a very clear understanding on all these details. But now we are going to talk about the dependency injections of Spring Boot in a much greater details, at least in terms of working with the Spring Boot's dependency injections like constructor dependency injections and field level dependency injections. So we'll see both of them in a couple of videos now. All right. So the first one is going to be the constructor level dependency injection. So in order to do that, all we're going to do is, as you have noticed in our earlier videos, we were trying to do an injection of the home page and the login page right on the main page, as you can see over here. And within this main page, we were trying to initialize the login page and the home page on this constructor method. This is the constructor method which I'm talking about. And then we are trying to perform the operation over here. And if you don't really initialize the home page object, then it's going to throw us a null pointer exception where it's trying to click this particular login button. So this is what is going to be a problem that we have. And this is what we are going to try resolving using the constructor dependency injection with Spring Boot. So in order to achieve that, the very simplest thing that we're going to be doing, if you remember, earlier we were talking about this component, that's exactly what we're going to be doing over here as well. So we are going to go to the main page over here, and then we are going to mark this as component like that. And we are going to see if this code is going to work for us or not. So this is the change that we are going to make. And because this is going to be a component, we are going to now call a new annotation, which is nothing but the @AutoWired. So this @AutoWired is going to be a annotation which is used to call the component which we are going to try doing a dependency injection. So just to understand, we are going to call the main page over here. Let's call this as main page. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment these 2 lines of code like that. And I'm going to comment the main page as well, as you can see over here. So you can see that I have commented almost all the lines of code, which is something we did all these days to perform the login operation. And because we have just called this AutoWired of the main page, and this guy, the main page, is going to be doing the initialization. So let me uncomment this particular piece of code, because this code is not going to work if it is commented, because this is where the initialization is going to happen. And the AutoWire is going to be taking care of that, like initializing the home page and login page for us behind the scene while we call this guy. And we'll see if the perform login method this time, if it works or not. And now I'm going to try executing this particular code and see what's going to happen. So basically, while I try to do this test is also going to fail, and you'll understand why it's going to fail in a minute. So you can see that it is currently failing. And if I go to the context load, it tells you that the java.lang.illegal state exception failed to load the application context. And this issue is happening, and if you just scroll probably down the line, it says unsatisfied dependency exception. It says error creating the bean with name main page defined over here, and there are some exception to create the bean for the login page and for the home page. So what does it really mean? Basically, within this main page, we have called the login page and the home page. We're trying to do an injection, but these 2 pages, the login page and the home page, are not a component classes. So we need to mark them as components as well, so that the object is going to be marked as component, and Spring Boot can do a dependency injection on them. If not, it's not going to really understand what these things are all about over here. So now if I try to execute this, and you see that this is the same idea that we discussed while we were discussing about the application context in our earlier video. That's exactly what's happening over here as well. So you can see that now it is working as expected. And now if you go back to the Spring Boot application test over here, you'll also notice that it is also calling the car instantiated. So this is coming over here because we have this particular car component, and this is even being called from the Spring Boot test that you are seeing, because now it is not only calling the component classes from this particular class path, but also from this particular class path over here. Even though it's not in the same test, it is still going to call over there because that's what it is trying to do, which is quite cool. So now you would have understood that this is what is called as the constructor level dependency injection, which the Spring Boot is currently doing. And we don't really have to initialize all these guys over here because we're calling this auto wired option for this particular main page. And because it has the constructors of the main page, has this login page and the home page, Spring Boot has already initialized the component. As you know that if it is component class, then Spring Boot is going to be initializing all these classes like types. So it will have the object type already while it's trying to call them, and then it's going to be working for you automatically. So for example, in order to see this once again, how does this thing work? So you can just create a constructor over here, and I'm just going to say select none, and within this I'm just going to say sysout in main page like that. And similarly, I'm just going to copy this, going to the login page. All right, this already has. And in the home page, I'm just going to change this to the home page over here. And let's go to this particular test. So let's say even before hitting this particular breakpoint, you will see what are the code being executed. So the main page is not even being called right now, and you will see that if I go to the console over here, you can see that in home page, in login page, in main page, car instantiated. So you can see the order in which these are being called in home page. So let's say if I go to the main page, you can see that it has called based on how these objects needs to be instantiated in home page, login page, and in main page, and the car instantiated this one. So everything is being instantiated because of the Spring Boot. So this is how the constructor level dependency injection works in Spring Boot. In our next video, we'll discuss how the field level injection happens in Spring Boot so that we'll understand more about the dependency injections.